quick yesterday.
I was like surprised. I said, oh, this is going to put a stop on this.
I came in this morning and did not expect it to go up.
No.
Hey, that should be it. Now we just got to deal with the
Speed bumps and then the crosswalk.
yeah, speed bumps, the crosswalk lights. Marcia. Oh, let's see. This. Really? Thank you. Good afternoon. Can everyone hear us okay? Everyone in the back here okay? All right. For those of you who are on the phone, if you could please put your phone on mute or silent during the program. We're going to go ahead and get started. As always, we start with prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together here in the mission and the ministry that is Florida Presbyterian Homes. We thank you for our residents. We thank you for the staff who serve them. We continue to look to you for all guidance and direction and wisdom and the strength to act on the wisdom that you have provided to us. Be with us in everything we do. Be with our residents in their opportunities and their challenges. Continue to guide us. In your name we pray. Amen. This is an Office of Insurance Regulation resident chat. So what's different about this from our normal monthly chat, we do this every quarter. It's a requirement of the Office of Insurance Regulation for the state of Florida. The primary difference is David provides a quarterly financial update. I also go over the board meeting. Those are really the two primary differences. Today, from our board, we have Scott Langston, and I think there's Martha. I saw Martha as well. Thank you for being here. I'm going to review the agenda quickly. We're going to start with Cher, who's going to bring more good news on IL and RL occupancy. Then I'll do the CEO ED report. It'll focus on our recent board meeting and the topics that the committees covered in their board committee meetings. And then we'll talk about the affiliation sponsorship update. Then I'll invite David to come up, and David will do the presentation on our quarterly year-to-date financials. And then he will invite Tasha, our Associate Executive Director, who will come up and talk about assisted living. And then I'm going to ask Tasha to stay up here and talk about life enrichment, and then she'll introduce Siobhan. And Siobhan is our administrator of Porter McGrath. And then after that, we'll take questions and comments. So with that, I'll turn it over to Cher. Do you want this?
Hear me? Yes? No? You can hear me? Yes, good. I bring good news. You know, I've been working with Rick for about 10 years now, and he's always been really nice to work with, but he just told me a few minutes ago he wanted me to slow down and not sell any more deals. And the answer is no, Rick. I respectfully decline your request. We have 2,836,900 year-to-date life occupancy fee move-ins. We have 506,000 contracted scheduled to move in. We have 3,242,900 year-to-date life occupancy fees collected, pending those move-ins, which is 957,900 more than 2022 total year-to-date. I wear 6 bracelets, and one of the residents asked me why I wear so many bracelets. Well, I have 6 move-ins. So I have a bracelet for every move-in I have scheduled, and I take them off and add them. You see, I have a long arm. I have room for more. We have Stephen and Joyce Dearden transferring, and they started in Daytona Beach, and they're moving 8-4. Jimmy Spake is moving in 8-5 from Anderson, South Carolina. Dr. and Mrs. Haskins are moving in 8-11 from Plant City. Plus, we have 1 move-in and 2 transfers on site, pending the completion of construction. My goal was to add 1 person to the waiting list every month this year, and we have. I've already got August, so we have room for more in August. We have 48 total on the waiting list. We've had 28 resident transfers on site, including one that's going on right now. And I have 4 notices to vacate: a duplex, a triplex, and a house and an apartment. We've had 17 deaths. So I have 1 house, 2 duplexes on hold, 1 house unsold, 1 duplex unsold. We're working on both of those construction-wise. And I just put 1 of those duplexes on hold this morning, so that'll be a $217,500 deal. And 6 apartments unsold. So that's our story.
Yay! Thank you. So we are seeing apartments sales as well, which is good, because that was one of our areas. At one point we had about 15 apartments that were vacant. So there's good movement there, and that's a positive. And obviously the houses continue to sell very successfully. I appreciate all the work of Cher and Rick and their teams as they move the process forward, and that's why we're here, is for the residents. So the more residents that are here to serve, the better for everyone. That's the blessing of what we do. In the CEO ED report, I'm going to go over the topics that were covered in each of the board committees, the primary topics. We have 4 board committees: Quality of Care and Service Committee, Governance Committee, Planning Committee, and Finance Committee. In all 4 of the committee meetings, we focused on the affiliation. So in every single one of those meetings, we did a presentation and we talked about key things related to their area, whether it's governance, whether it's quality of care, whether it's financial, or whether it's planning. And so I want to share some of the key points that we shared with the board about the affiliation opportunity. This is information that is public. It's not something that is private. As you know, I've shared with you that we are in the discussions with Westminster, and we have to get their approval before I can share anything related to the agreement, and they have to get our approval before anything can be shared related to the agreement. So what I'm sharing with you is data and information that we shared with our board. So in the planning committee, the things that they wanted to focus on were how was Westminster the best opportunity for our organization to move forward? We looked at similarities of our mission and our values. Westminster was founded in 1954, 1 year before Florida Presbyterian Homes. Like us, they were founded by a local Presbyterian church. Theirs was in Bradenton, ours was here in Lakeland, that led the founding of our organizations. They are both centered in the 8 dimensions of wellness. You'll often hear Allison and others in our wellness committee focused on the dimensions of wellness. Their life enrichment program, like ours, is centered in those dimensions of wellness. Obviously, both are faith-based, not-for-profit organizations. We wanted to look at their strategic initiatives. Did they align with our strategic plan? The other day I had a resident come into my office and say, Joe, I was involved in strategic planning on one of the committees, remember? I said, oh yeah. And he said, when you look at the work that we did in the strategic plan, it seems like it aligns exactly with where Westminster's strategic initiatives are. And he said, was that on purpose? And I said, we weren't even thinking about Westminster when we developed the strategic plan. But as we looked at it with our planning committee, some of the strategic initiatives that we laid out are very consistent with what they do, and I'll outline a few of them for you. On each of their life plan communities, they have multiple dining options for their independent living and residential living residents. That's something that we've had as a goal here for years. And so we see that that's something on every one of their life plan community campuses they have. OIR Lifelong Learning, which is a program that when Lucia was moving in, she and I talked about we would love to have some type of a more formal lifelong learning program here on campus. And I had shared about the OIR Institute, the OLLI initiative, and that we would like to get that here on our campus, and they are in that program. So they'll be able to initiate that here with us and you as well. Wonderful program. We'll still maintain the academy, of course, because that has great value to you as residents. This is just an additional opportunity for growth and learning for our residents that's provided through this national program. They have chaplains and pastoral care on every campus, and like us, it's a priority. Some communities I've worked in have had chaplains on the campus, and they were an afterthought. It really wasn't part of the fabric of the mission and ministry of the organization. There, when Etta and our team, we visited the different communities, I asked Etta, when you talked to your counterparts, did you feel that they were integrated in the fabric of that community? And Etta said, yes, absolutely. Very consistent with who we are and what we're about. So we feel very good about that. Their quality of care, they have 9 of their 11 life plan communities have skilled care. 5 of the 9 in 2022 were 5-star, the highest rating that you can get under Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. 3 received 4-star, and 1 received a 2-star rating. So overall, historically, their quality of care provided to their residents has been very strong. Employee initiatives. Their turnover rate for 2021-2022 was 44.7. The national average is 54.8, and we're right at about 54 here over that same time period. So they're outperforming the national average in terms of retaining quality employees. They also offer a lot of career advancement opportunities because they're a larger system. People have opportunities to grow and evolve in their mission and ministries in their profession. They invest significant amount of money in training, staff development, and employee recognition. They're able to do things for their employees that we just have not been able to do in terms of program training services. In our strategic plan, we talked about a memory care unit. And that's something on 9 of their 11 life plan communities have memory care units in their assisted living. And they had shared that that's an area that they're committed to developing in all of their campuses, is memory care. Something that we're seeing as a need, and we've seen as a need here for many years. And they have that expertise, and they are doing that. They utilize, for their electronic medical record, what's recognized as an industry best practice for their electronic medical record. Point-click care is the system. So it's a system that is recognized in our field for clinical care excellence. So they would intend to bring that to our community as well. So let's see, the community impact. We also wanted to make sure that we were looking in our strategic plan about offering affordable independent living. So we initiated the rental contract, you may recall, about 2 years ago. So far, we do not have anyone in that rental contract at this point, but Cher's been doing a good job selling the apartments as life care. Often I understand when people come in looking at the rental, they say, well, for this much more, I can get a life care contract, and they end up going to the life care contract. But they have 12 apartments, independent living apartment buildings, primarily on the east coast of Florida, but they're committed to affordable independent living apartments as well. They're not just centered in life plan communities. They also have these 12 communities, primarily along the east coast, that are affordable housing, which was something that we were interested in. They have a strong foundation. And when I'm saying foundation, I'm not meaning the generic term foundation, I'm meaning fundraising. They have I think their vice president of philanthropy was a vice president of philanthropy at a large health system in Orlando. And they were able to steal this person away. So very strong fundraising program. And that's something that in our committee we were hoping to develop fundraising and a foundation here. So they bring that to us. They have that already. They're very active in their leading age in all the associations in our state and our national association as well. In fact, their chief operating officer is the chair for this year of Leading Age Florida. Some of the differences that if this moves forward, and again, it's not a done deal, but if this moves forward, they'll have an executive director on this campus. He or she will focus on the residents and the day-to-day operations. What's different in terms of like my role compared to this person's role, in my role I was also reporting to the board. This person does not report to a board. So they don't have the governance, the committee meetings and governance responsibilities. They're not responsible for strategic planning or master site planning. Their sole focus is the day-to-day operations of the organization. So when residents have issues or concerns, you still follow the same pathway. If you get a bad piece of meat in the dining room, don't send a letter to the ED saying, hey, I had a bad piece of meat. Say to the waitress in front of you, I need a better piece of meat, or I need to change my option here. Don't wait. Address it then. If it's a larger scale issue, if it's something that is within, let's take dining again, and you just say, I just can't find anything that I could eat. Well, go to Dean, talk to Dean, meet with Dean, meet with our nutritionist, and come up with a plan with Dean and the dietitian to meet your needs. If those things don't happen, and for whatever, and Dean would never do this, but if Dean wasn't responsive, then you would go to the executive director and say, we've tried, this hasn't worked. If the executive director is not responsive, go to the resident council president and let the resident council president be aware. Because maybe the resident council president's heard that issue 12, 13 times and wants to bring it to a greater level of attention with the executive director. So operationally, it's different in terms of how they are governed. They're governed with a parent company board that is based in Orlando. That parent company board is the board that is responsible for all strategy, budget development, overall growth of the organization. They will have what's called a sub-board. The sub-board consists of 2 of our existing board members who were nominated to be on the sub-board, and then on the sub-board would include their board chair of corporate, their CEO, their CFO, and their COO. The sub-board would only meet as needed. The sub-board is not meeting because a group of residents doesn't like the food or something along. It's always dressed back to the ED to address those issues. So the sub-board meets as needed. There's a regional advisory committee. 2 of our board members have been nominated to the regional advisory committee. We would be assigned to what's called the Tampa region. And from Tampa region, you've got St. Pete, Bradenton, and us, basically. And the representatives, the 2 representatives, would meet on a quarterly basis. The resident council president from each campus would present their information from their campus, would be shared in that meeting. And at that point, that's where topics would be addressed that were of scale to each campus. So that's how that group would function. This is new. They have not done this before, but they would have what's called a development task force. And we've recommended 3 of our board members to participate on that task force. The task force has one sole focus, and that's the master site plan, phase 1 of the master site plan. So they would be working with the regional vice president of operations or of development and the executive director, and they are focused solely on the master site plan. And the master site plan is what we had created. They're supporting that as well. So the idea of where Cressup and Lake Hunter and the Sixplex would be phase 1. That would be phase 1, to develop the new apartment building in that site. And they are committed to that. And that would be something that would benefit our community significantly, because not only would it add additional opportunities for new residents to come into the community, but it'll also add amenity space for all residents to be able to utilize. So they're committed to moving forward with that as well. So that gives you an idea on what was shared with our quality committee, with our planning committee, and with governance. I want to focus now on financial. So one of the things with the finance committee that we did was we did a thumbnail sketch of financial comparison of Florida Presbyterian homes to Westminster Retirement Communities, which is just their 11 life plan communities. Florida Presbyterian Homes has unrated debt. What that means is that we, organizations within our field, they seek to get a rating from Fitch or Standards & Poor. So in their bonds, they would pay a lower interest rate on any bonds that they would have in their operation, any debt that they would have. When you're unrated, you pay a higher interest rate. They're A- rated by Fitch. In our industry, in our field, less than about 10% of providers have a rating at all. Only 10%, so 90% are like us, they're unrated. Of that 10%, only about 5% have an A rating. So it gives you an idea when you look at financial health of an organization. Fitch, Standard & Poor's are outside organizations who come in and assess the debt exposure that an organization has with their bonds. So even after COVID, they maintained an A rating. So very strong financially. Our total current assets from December 2022, about $4,207,637. Their total current assets as of 12/22, $43,450,210. Total liabilities and net assets, ours is about $56 million, theirs is about $828 million. Days cash on hand, not including minimum liquid reserve, ours at the time was about 68, we're a little better now. Their days cash on hand was 213. The minimum requirement for the Office of Insurance Regulation with MLR is 100 days. So it just gives you an idea of kind of where they're at from a financial perspective. When we did site visits, we had a number of board members and representatives from the resident council and staff. And in the site visits, one of the things we saw was many of their communities, the majority of the communities that are life plan communities, they acquired. So it wasn't that they were constantly building brand new life plan communities. I think it was out of the 11, 9 were acquired. And so we wanted to see, did they invest in those communities? And we saw one community that was acquired in 1991, another one that was acquired in 1992. And it was very obvious when we looked at the buildings that they were investing in those buildings. And they were building new buildings to meet the needs of the market. They've been very successful in building brand new independent living apartments, very similar to what we're talking about at Crescent and Lake Hunter. So very strong commitment to investing into the communities that they become affiliated with. So those were the things within the committees that we focused on and talked about. In the board meeting, we had a motion that was outside of the affiliation, and it was basically to clean up what is our electronic proxy voting, and that allows the board, because of COVID, we developed this policy where if a person could not be engaged via Zoom or be engaged in person, they were allowed to assign another board member their vote on a vote. And it's something that we followed the state regulations around electronic voting. And so the change we made in the motion was they had to assign it to an officer of the board. And we changed that to say they could assign it to a member of the board. They did not have to be required to be an officer. To some extent, this may be moot, because if this moves forward, Westminster would bring in their new policies. So it wouldn't be the same governance structure under the same governance policies, should that be the case. So at that point, in the board meeting, the board focused most of their attention on the affiliation. I can share with you now, progress is continuing to be made. We're continuing to move forward. It is not a done deal. So every time somebody asks me, is it a done deal, I can share with you, and what they're sharing with their people as well, good progress is being made. And I don't know if Scott or Martha, if you have anything else. No, I'm seeing no. So with that, I want to stop here. There's not a whole lot I can answer because, again, we're in that process, and I'm not allowed to share specific information relating to the agreement, other than we are making good progress. And that, to me, I think we're all excited about that. Everyone who's involved has felt very good about this, from their side and from our side. So with that, okay, I'm going to turn it over to our CFO, our esteemed CFO, tall David Larson. Oh, you're not esteemed? You're tall.
Okay, now for the fun part, right? By the way, I did plant one mistake in here. Let's see who can find it. Huh? You got it already. Steal my thunder. Okay, slides to follow, short and sweet. The operations was our top items to discuss for cash and income and whatnot. Coverage ratios, the debt covenants that we have for the bond have gone up wonderfully. Say almost a full point from just last quarter. Went from 235 to 335. And that's all because of the efforts of our marketing department. When Cher stated that we're at 2.9 and potentially 3.3 if what's on the books closes. Our budget this year is 2.4 for the entire year. She hit that before June. So the marketing efforts, the varsity team, our marketing team has really knocked it out of the park this year. Unprecedented. You're going to see that as it ripples through the financials. It really shows up. So we're well covered in our debt service coverage ratio. That means we're 3.5, almost 3.3 years of operations can cover 1 year of debt. Debt to net assets really doesn't move. That's a measurement of our fund balance, our equity, our net assets. Essentially anything that just shows the total debt of the company, the entire debt of the company, divided by the net assets. So if the equity is, in this case, 0.57, then the debt is like 0.57 of that amount. So it's one or the other. Now, if the debt was more than the equity, then we're essentially is consideration of being underwater. And that would be representing in a number of 1.0 or higher. And we're not. So that's always been good. And it moves essentially once a year. Here's a snapshot of the balance sheet. We have June of this year compared to June of this time last year, and then compared to the audit that was just completed. And not a whole lot of movement here, except cash is up quite a bit, almost $1 million. Assets, there's just essentially the prepaids, and that's just normal working capital changes. The market, for many of you all probably recognize, has recovered some these last couple of quarters. Fixed assets is relative flat. The drop in liabilities mainly is moving our swap liability to a swap asset. It's a kind of a non-cash thing. It's pertains to if we were to unwind the debt right now, we'd have to, or the bank would actually have to pay us for a change because of the change in the interest rates. It's great. But, the offset is you'd be refinancing at a higher interest rate, so it may not necessarily be a good thing to go. But probably the other big thing here is the net income. A year ago, June of 2022, we were at a $4 million loss. The bulk of that, granted, was the market slam that everyone was feeling. But this, 6 months, we're at $389,000 profit, and fairly a bulk of that is market recovery, which is pretty much shown here. Here's a snapshot of the income statement, or what we can call our controllable are these, and what we don't control as much are these. So just as a comparative, our year-over-year increase in revenue is 16%, and I'm just annualizing this, it's 6 months times 2. So roughly 14 million to a 12 million, that's a 16% increase. But the other side of it is our operating expenses are a 21% increase. And that's what's triggering this operating margin loss. This time, or no, it's compared to budget. I don't have this time last year. It's just compared to budget. But the 12 months, just to go show you, it's 12 months operating loss was 883, and here we're 6 months into it. We're almost at the loss we were from 12 months of last year. So it's still the staffing challenges in the health center, and the regulatory requirements for the minimum staffing, and all that gets rolled up into there. Although agency continues, it has declined this last couple of months, or last month, but it's still been sizable. I think we peaked at 116,000 in May. Or no, I'm sorry. Yeah, around 116, I think it was. June, I believe it was 90, so it dropped down about 30. But months previous, it was like in the 90s on up. We were only budgeting 25,000 a month for agency. So it's quite the challenge. Staff can be a whole lot more nimble than the operation of the building. The other revenue and other expense are essentially non-cash and investment. So when we amortize the contracts, it's called deferred revenue. That's one part of it. And all the operating gains and losses, non-operating, or the non-operating realized and unrealized gains and losses are in the other revenue account. And then other expense are just depreciation expense, transfers between funds. I mean, stuff that normally isn't part of just the day-to-day taking care of you guys. But, you know, the flip side is we're at a net profit of 389 compared to, we plan to be at a budget of 201,000 loss. So it's essentially been made up from the market and realized and unrealized gains. Cash flow statement. So the entrance fees drop here, so that shows you that the operations are turning a cash flow positive, 2.8 million. Investing, essentially property and a change in investments, so that's a use. And then, of course, payment on debt. That's the principal portion for the net increase to cash of 899,000. And then just as far as trending, we monitor the risks. You know, one thing that's probably missing from this whole conversation is with the affiliation is we aren't doing a budget right now because I think their fiscal year end is March. And they'll be coming in and doing a separate one. It wouldn't make sense for us to start off on something that could be changed wholly by them. But this is one of the key indicators as far as how the monthly fee increase tends to flow. It tends to track with a CPI. If you notice last year, 9.8%, I think we did a 12% increase overall because we also did a 4.5 compared to this 5.8 in the year before. We anticipated the market or the CPI to go down, it did not, and that really squeezed us for 22, and we had to make up for it in 22 with the 12%. But for the most part, we stayed close to CPI, and it's nice to see that CPI for our area is at 3.3%, which is significantly less than last year. Not promising anything, but we tend, with the 4 or 5 communities I've been involved with, we've always try to stay really close to CPI as far as what the increase will be. So it might be an indicator that as these guys come in, they may do the same thing. Now, one more. Our spending is up, and that's mainly because of the staffing Just to give you an idea, this is just a recap. I didn't really change this. We've made multiple wage adjustments to try and stay competitive. And, I mean, essentially the real challenge is there's just not enough people. We raise the rates, we attract people, they stay here for a while, then Carpenters raises rates, or the restaurants raises rates, or Amazon, or whomever in our area. So we're just competing for people that there's not enough people around. And when we raise rates, that buys us time, 3 to 6 months maybe, until somebody else decides to raise their rates because they're filling the vacuum. And then it just goes in a circle. Hopefully, I believe one of the hopes when Westminster comes is they have such a larger consortium of people that they can move people around, or even, I don't even know if they have their own, yeah, they do, they have their own home health, which might be a pseudonym to a internal staffing agency, which would help stabilize some of the challenges we have here with them. But this is just, I mean, even back in January, did another adjustment. And it's just a constant battle. But it's frustrating. But cash is up. I mean, marketing is just absolutely knocked it out of the park. I mean, for this year so far. Although it just has proved our, spending just keeps going up and up. But, I mean, outlook obviously is very great because of the group that we're going into. I mean, they are very strong, as Joe said, Fitch rated. Even the government gets downgraded, but they don't. So that's a little joke. Okay, sorry. Anyway, no, they're a good group. They're solid. They're to be A-rated in this industry is almost unheard of. Most of them are like triple B minus, if they're rated at all. Anyway, their financials are very strong. And that's pretty much it. Is there any questions? Wow, is that captivating? So you got the mistake right off. You're supposed to wait till the end, then everybody's, what is this mistake? But yeah, the date. I messed up on the date. But that's it. Next is Tasha. Oh, I'm sorry.
Was it on page 5, the mistake?
No, it's on page 1. Page 1 was the mistake. The date, I had August 3rd, it said August 2nd. Yeah, I thought about fixing it, but then I thought, nah, I'll just throw it in. Okay, Missy. Oh, sorry. Looks like one more. Yes, sir.
The SWAP, that's a swap, right?
Yes.
What's it indexed
I believe it's 5 1/8.
Which index?
Oh, we were under LIBOR, and they switched to SOFR. When LIBOR went away, I think a couple years ago, and the industry switched over to SOFR.
Why don't we close that out? You've got $389,000 worth of net income. You could close that out.
If we, the only way to close out the swap is to essentially pay off the debt, and if we can't pay off the debt, then we'd have to refinance it.
It's indexed to the debt.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we pay off the swap, or they pay us the balance of the swap, we'd have to refinance at current rates, would probably be 1 or 2 points above what we're paying now, which would be ultimately more expensive. You're welcome. Okay. Missy?
Hello, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me? I know we have to have this right up on there. All right. I'll be giving you guys the ALF and life enrichment updates. We have great updates for ALF. We have 43 out of 47 occupied units. I actually, as of 30 minutes ago, we've slated 3 more people to come to assisted living. So that will put us at a 46 out of 47, which is a 98%. So we've got that in progress right now. Staffing, we hired 4 new staff in July, which is fantastic. So those of you in assisted living have probably seen them. It's Nicole, Antonia, Clarissa, and Chinta. So that is a new member of our team, 4 new members. Any questions for assisted living? I'm going to move on to life enrichment. Yes, ma'am.
The occupied ALF, are those some of the apartments that are down on the first floor?
Yes, ma'am. So the question was, are some of the occupied apartments down the HD apartments that are across from the dining room? So yes, those, we've got some plans for those to occupy. All righty. I will move on to life enrichment. Things move quickly here. Yes, ma'am.
There was a situation where there wouldn't be good nursing coverage for those rooms down there at one time, and they haven't been used. Are we going to enhance our nursing staff to cover those rooms?
That is a great question that I have a good answer for. So her question was, have we changed the staffing in assisted living? Because initially that was a big concern for us, was to make sure that we had care for those apartments, the new apartments across from the dining room, and the answer is yes. So now we have someone stationed at Monty Johnson, and we have a nurse on the first floor in addition to the CNA on the first floor of assisted living. So between them, we've got that covered. Yeah. Any other ALF questions? All right, well, on to the more fun stuff, life enrichment. So for those of you guys who have been following our dear Lynn's journey, she is out of onboarding and on the floor. So we are so very excited to welcome Miss Lynn. She is going to be our part-time person. Her ultimate schedule will be Tuesday through Saturday, which is also very exciting. We'll get some more fun on Saturdays. Right now, I'm working on a voter registration program. We've got a life enrichment meeting to figure out when that's going to be. I think there's some changes with voter registration, so we'll make sure to get that presentation information out to you guys. Yesterday, we had the National Night Out Breakfast. It was a wonderful turnout. Thank you all who came, showed support for our police department. I think they really enjoyed it. We've got some good observances coming up that we're going to do some fun things for. On August 8th, which is next week, we are requesting pictures of your cats. It is World Cat Day on August 8th. So if you have pictures of your cats, let myself or Susan Trevino know, because we need some pictures. We're going to do a fun activity. Don't worry, dogs are not discluded. That's just on the 26th. So we are also requesting pictures and names of your dogs, just for a fun little activity. In September, we've got a little bit more heavy-hitting activities. That is Miss Allison's Western dinner, I believe, at the end of the month, where we all dress up and have a really great time in the dining room, so we're looking forward to that. And then it is National Centenarian Day on the 22nd of September, so we'll plan a fun lunch for that. That is all the good updates that I've got. Good, bad, ugly, all of them, but mostly good and pretty. Is there anything that you guys need or questions? Yes, ma'am.
What about staffing on weekends? Any better at
Not using agency. The question was, staffing on the weekends, have we done better about not using agency? Yes, we're filling those positions. So that is what we're working towards. Some of the 4 people we hired in July have been in training so that they can work independently on the weekends. So that is in progress. All right, if that's all for me, then I will love to welcome Miss Siobhan. Oh, last time Etta did really fun intros. You want me to work? No. All right. Oh, okay. I can do it for you.
Good afternoon on this beautiful Wednesday. I have just a couple things. There's not much going on in PMG at this point, but today our census is at 50, a little bit lower than we would like to see, but we're still getting quite a few referrals and quite a few admissions. So it's just a balancing act because of the short-term rehab, because they don't stay as long. So we continue to work on that. We are in, I believe, month 17, waiting for our annual survey. The rules are that they are supposed to come, the state is supposed to come between 12 and 15 months. And so we have surpassed that by 2 months, and they are yet to come. I believe that they're probably having some of the staffing issues that everybody else is having. So we continue to work and progress and make sure that we're doing things according to our regulations so that we have a good survey. The other thing is, I know David's talked about it, Joe's talked about it, our staffing. We are still having issues with our staffing. So lately we have had, I want to say it's 3 CNA openings come up, and we still have several nursing positions that are open. I talked with the recruiter this morning, and we actually have 3 nurses in progress, which means we've hired them and they're going through all the paperwork and the new hire process. So that is good news, but we still have room for several more. So we'll continue to work on that. Is there any questions for me? Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, so we sent a letter out today. We have had a little bit of an outbreak of COVID. There were 2 residents in PMG that were in our short-term rehab that when they went back home, they tested positive. We also have a staff member that works on the same floor that has tested positive. So we are following the CDC guidelines, and I believe there was something that went out earlier about mask wearing. I just encourage all of you that if you're out and you're in a congregate area to wear a mask. It protects you, and hopefully we'll get through this. I did hear before I came in here that one of our residents that was admitted yesterday, her husband now is tested positive. So I don't know if there's an uptick right now in the positive cases for the county. I think our infection preventionist was going to check on that and see what our transmitting rate was for the county. But we do have a few people that have had it. So I would just suggest frequent hand washing and wear a mask if you're out and about and around others.
There we go. Okay. Before we get into the questions and comments, I just want to share, as it relates to COVID, just kind of supporting what Siobhan has talked about. If you have any type of an immunosuppressive disorder, or you're someone that has any risk for COVID, that is significant if you did get COVID and you felt because of your health or because of your weight or issues that it could be something severe, take the extra precautions, you know, and wear the masks when you're around others and you cannot social distance. I think what we're hearing on a national basis is they're starting to say they're worried about the fall, and again, the threat of the regular flu, COVID, is there, and so they're talking about rolling out a new vaccine and getting a vaccine that combines for the seasonal flu and for COVID. I don't know if you're hearing anything, Debbie, on that through the pharmacy initiatives, but if you get any information that you feel we should share, please pass it along and we'll share that with the residents. But that's what we're hearing, is that they're hoping by October they would have something in place to distribute to long-term care providers. So our team, our infection control nurse, Asia, and our team will stay on top of that with Dr. Haight, our medical director, and should there be vaccines made available, we'll communicate that to you and get that to you, okay? Another topic I want to cover is Spectrum. That was another topic that came up a couple of weeks ago. Spectrum, our contract with Spectrum auto-renews, and it's a 5-year window, and it auto-renewed. Actually, it auto-renewed. It starts in December, but we have to give 6 months notice, so it auto-renewed. We talked with Westminster to say, do you guys have a better option than Spectrum? We looked at Frontier. Part of the problem with Frontier is they said we're wired to the street, but they would have to bring in cabling here, and there was some very expensive rates to do that. So we're trying to look at, you know, what are the other options from a Wi-Fi perspective that are available. Whoa. Oh, sorry about that. Well, not sure. Okay. Sorry about that. But so we are in discussions with Spectrum. I think we were going to schedule a meeting with them. We were trying to get a meeting with Spectrum to see if we can get a better rate. But again, it auto-renews, and we have to give 6 months notice, and that's where it did auto-renew. So we're at the point of trying to see if we can get a better deal. But questions about that or comments about that? Please.
I'd rather have better service.
So would I. I'll be honest, I dump Spectrum at home, and I'm straight streaming. I've got Hulu, and I do all streaming. It's just it's a lot of the DirecTVs and all those. There's DirecTV satellite-based, but they're all cable lines that they're drawing as well. So nothing's foolproof, I guess. Nothing's foolproof, unfortunately. Any other comments or questions on that? Please, Shirley.
With regard back to the COVID issue.
Yeah.
What would the requirement be for us all to be tested like we were previously?
So good question. Shirley's asking, what would the requirement be for us all to go back to testing? Please, Siobhan, yeah, let's get the best person to answer that. Thank you. Do you need a mic? Here, let me get you a mic. Okay, thanks.
So actually testing, what you're talking about is broad-based testing. And there are stipulations for broad-based testing, but the CDC is really not recommending doing broad-based testing. So what they are saying now is to do contact tracing, where if someone turns up positive, you look at the people around them and try to figure out how that person got positive. So, for example, the two residents in PMG that turned up positive after they left, they both had the same CNA that just turned up positive. So it's contact tracing. So then what we do is we test those people that could have been affected, which is it's probably all of the residents on the first floor, PMG. So we test those. It's a 1 day, 3 day, and 5 day testing. And that helps us if it did spread to someone else, that we catch it early. Okay, so that's what we're doing. We can still do broad-based testing like you're saying to test everyone, but you know, we did that when it was required, and we were testing weekly for I think 3 or 4 months because somebody new would come up. So I think the CDC has gotten a little bit more wise about the testing, and so that's how we're doing the testing now, is the contact tracing. If we see more and more people pop up as positive, then we may gather back together and say, you know, we probably should start the broad-based testing. But for right now, it's just the contact tracing. You're welcome.
And we're fortunate to have Dr. Haight as part of our team because he's got a public health background in infection prevention. So having him as a medical director right now is a real benefit. So if we see that the community spread is going up significantly, that's where we have that resource to sit down and say, do we need to do something more proactive at this point in time? You had a question earlier.
I do.
Yeah.
I have a observation, suggestion, comment. Just like some of our contracts are coming up, one of the contracts I think that affects a lot of the residents here on campus is who takes care of the vegetation, the trimming, the cutting, et cetera. And on the assumption that we have like a biannual contract, this year it would be coming up again, because I think the last time I asked, it was 2 years ago. So I'm bringing up that suggestion that perhaps whoever ends up with the contract have a tractor available, not just riding mowers, because there is the retention pond down at the end that although a tractor would not bring it down low, it would still be less than 6 foot tall. So the vegetation there is getting quite high. It hides a lot of interesting critters, and it would be nice if that particular company, whoever it is, has a tractor available, because I've noticed that a lot of the other commercial properties in the area, that they have tractors, wide, big wheel tractors with higher cutting beds, blades, but they still have a way to keep it down below 6 feet. And keeping with that too, I'd also like to suggest that that company, whoever it is, also have in the contract to collect any debris that is laying around the campus, the branches, the fronds, et cetera. It lays around for a week until one of the residents drags it out and puts it on the road. So that I don't know if anybody else has something to chime in on our grounds.
Thank you, Debbie. Paul?
Has that timetable changed? Is it still fairly accurate? What is
I'm
your
making
sense?
progress.
That doesn't tell me anything.
Exactly. That's what I'm allowed to speak to. I know people think I'm being coy and that I'm just deciding not to. That's not the case. There's nothing that I want to do that would put this in jeopardy. And I'm relying on the other organization, they're relying on us to define what can be shared and when it can be shared. Polly, did you have a question?
I wonder, do people know that they can go to the second floor of ALF at any time and request testing for COVID? Yesterday, I heard a sort of a rumor that affected me, and I trotted myself up there because I'd heard that, and I said, I think that I have been sitting with someone who has come down with COVID. Would you please test me? And they did, and I was negative. And so I wonder if people realize that if we don't have to go back to broad-based testing, which is a nightmare for all of us, including the staff. I mean, it's just awful for all of us. I think that would be well to staff the second floor and allow people to go there and request testing if that's what they want. Now, if we have people that cannot get around, I'm sure that they have a nurse or nursing assistant or whomever that they can request testing from them.
So it's symptom-based testing. It's symptom-based. So if you have symptoms, it's been in this, I think we've had it in the scoop for now going on 4 years, I think. But if you have symptoms, please notify the second floor AL and or Katie, our community nurse through AL. But it's symptom-based. If you have symptoms, to let them know and they will test.
I have one other thing that I want to say, is that the training of staff, I have been in business all of my life in nonprofits, and I have learned over the years, and I'm pretty old now, I'm getting to be 78 this year, and so I'm not as old as some, I know, but training is everything, and you have to pay for it in care and concern and money to make effective training for people, that you have to let them know they're loved and cared about from the day they walk onto the property, for even to inquire about a job. And I used to teach and run a program for a couple of the places that I did. And it's just so important. And what this entails is having 2 hours a week per employee, give or take. It could be they come in early, go home late, depending on their shifts and those kind of things. But there has to be real buy-in, and it has to be an effective program. And they can be purchased or dreamt up or whatever you want to do, but they have to be appropriate for the environment. And I can't say enough, because our employee turnover, I am sure, is due to lack of training. And it's not because people are mean or don't want to train. They're not taught to train. You have to teach people. A housekeeper is trained to clean a house, not to train someone else to do it. They may be good at it, but they might not be to either. Thank you.
Please. Lynn?
I've heard from various people that are more in the school system about a virus. I think it's RMV.
RSV.
Yes, well, evidently it's like around a lot of the high schools and whatever. So do we know if we have any of that here, or do we need to get?
No. We have not had
I
any
have not
reported
heard
cases
of
RSV.
any cases here.
It's a respiratory, so I mean, again, pardon? Yes. Right. Yeah. Well, what Paul is saying, it's mostly to children. but adults can get it. I would talk to your physician if that's something that, if you have a challenge, a respiratory challenge, talk with your physician about RSV and see if he or she has any recommendations. But up to this point, it has not been an issue here. Any other questions or comments? Lucia?
When this is actually a done deal. Yeah, okay, when it's actually a done deal, how are you going to let us know?
So the question is, with the affiliation, when it is actually, if it's actually a done deal, then how will you let us know? So we and Westminster have just started talking about that. And what has been recommended by us is that we do a notice that goes out to residents and staff, and followed by town hall meetings. Town hall meetings with the residents, town hall meetings with the staff, that includes them. So it's not me up here saying, well, here's what I think they're gonna do, or here's what I think. But it's more of me introducing them and going and sitting on the side and them presenting. Now, I think what is a reasonable expectation, they're not gonna have every answer to every question in that meeting. I mean, think about what it takes to run an operation like this. They're learning a lot about us. They've got a lot of information, and we've been meeting, very infrequently, but we've been meeting and talking about these things. They're looking at what it would take in about a 3-month period for a transition plan to be developed within that period. So it wouldn't be like that on that day, that's it and it's done and they're here and they're operating. There'll be periods and points of transition probably for about a year. Things like payroll. When does payroll transition over and how does it transition over? When do technologies shift from one technology to another? As David shared, they're on a calendar that's different than ours. Their calendar is a March calendar. Ours is a calendar year calendar. So all those things, they'll be meeting with our teams to figure out how and when do each one of those pieces shift and change. When does a new executive director come in? Is there an overlap time? All those things are in the gray zone. But our sense is, and the best way to do it, is start with our residents and staff with an announcement and an immediate meeting. So there's opportunity for residents and staff to hear the information first, and then issue a press release to the broader community after that. But that's kind of the process that we've been talking about. How does that sound? I mean, is that sound? Yeah. Yeah, 11, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know, but this is some things. The last one they did, I think, was 3 years ago with St. Augustine, or more than 3, 5 years ago in St. Augustine. New CEO, he's only been there for about 3.5 years. So this is his first one. So he may have a little different communication thoughts and process. I know that they've done some things differently in this process. Primarily, you're right, Bill, because their CFO's been there for 30 years. COO's been there for 12 years. So they've got a lot of experience and history in doing this. But the thing, what I'm appreciating about this process, they don't come in and just say, this is the way it's done, just do this. They're open to discussion. And I think as an organization, they feel better about having communication and getting, this type of a open discussion than just coming in and saying, you know, we're gonna be there on Friday and this is what we're doing. So it's a little different. It's a little different than how they've done it in the past. As an example, that advisory committee, you know, they recognize that they need to do something different because they've never been in Lakeland before. They don't have the relationships with the city. So having an advisory committee with people who have those relationships with the city is really important. They've never done that before, but they said, yeah, that's something we need to do. That's a good idea. So they can learn too, and you know, we can all learn from each other. Other thoughts, comments, questions? Okay. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate you.